tonight, Peter goes on now to address husbands. Okay? So, tonight, if Jonathan joins, oh, he's on here? Oh, he's there. Okay. All right, brother. Can you see me and hear me over here? Okay, cool. All right. All right, good. Because we're starting out in 1 Peter 3:7 tonight. And Peter is going to talk to husbands. And so it's our turn, man. It's our turn. Man, Paula took the easy way out. She missed the hard one last week for the wives and the ladies. Right? She just gets to sit here and jab Jonathan all night. But listen, Peter is going to address husbands. And so we, right now specifically then, that would hit me and Jonathan and Matt, and possibly, Lord willing, who else? Who else? Who else? All right. So all 6 of us guys, we need to perk up and tune in for this. The ladies got 6 verses. We only get 1. Okay. But I think there's enough for us to really consider in this one verse. Okay. So let's read it, and then we'll go on and do some teaching about it. In the same way, we've learned what that means, right? He always says, in the same way. That means prior to what came before. In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. Okay? So, as men and young men are looking at that verse, just exactly to be fair, I want to start the way I did with the ladies and ask husbands and husbands-to-be to look at that verse, and let's just talk and hear from you what you learn in that verse. What do you hear the apostle saying to you in, kind of a summary? Don't just read it back to me, but what do you hear this man saying to you as husbands and husbands-to-be?
To treat our wives in an understanding way.
Okay. What are you walking away with?
I'd say just what I see there, what Peter's saying is just basically a husband should treat their wives with dignity and respect and honor them. And so, just that, I guess.
Right, you don't have to try to make it say any more than it says,
Exactly.
right?
Right, it's good.
Okay, then let's kind of jump our way into it here. Peter tells husbands to honor their wives. Honor them. What are ways that we can honor our wives? And I don't just need to hear from myself and Jonathan and Matt, but also Matthew, Asher, Brandon. One day, how can you honor your wife or wife-to-be? What are ways you can do that? How do you honor her? Peter, is this what we do when we read the word? We're like, okay, he told us that. Or do we think, what does that mean to honor my wife?
When it comes to honoring, like my wife in particular, that's like objective to subjective, because I gotta know my wife and I gotta know what she likes and dislikes, so that I can find ways to honor her in whatever it is that she enjoys or she doesn't enjoy.
Okay. We're just discussing here, friends.
I would say another thing I think of is just basic is just communication, like communicating with my wife and just making her involved in life decisions, financial matters, family matters, like we're on the same page and we're not kind of like operating on 2 different programs, and just that kind of thing. And like when you're around other people, just showing care and respect, like you're just not like keep her off to the side. So like your group with groups of people, you know, just include her in those types of things and just making her feel loved and welcome and yeah.
Okay. Any other young men or Jonathan? How to honor.
You're going to say old man.
How do I turn this up?
Sorry.
Did you want to say anything? Or
Yeah, you said young men or old men, and then you said Jonathan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wise man.
No, what Matt was just saying was an excellent point. That's difficult for men to do sometimes, and but yeah, and the honor also is to be a protector too. Protector from all the things that could hurt her emotionally, spiritually, or physically as well. So it's that's also another area to honor her.
okay, so when I prepare to teach, I dig in. All right, so I dug in on this one to find out, men, what do we need to do when we're honoring our wives? What are some ways we can do that? And I'll tell you all, as one of Darcy's favorite old lines is, put on your big boy pants. All right, you ready to put on your big boy pants, right? We got to put them on. Because I'll share with you some of the things that, that this could mean in pretty much ways to honor our wives. One, we'll start off with this one, and I know all wives are hoping their husbands are taking notes, right? You honor your wife by not looking at other women or comparing her to them in any way, right? We're in church, and so we have these conversations, and I say these things, and we're like, yeah, but we know that is real. We know that even Christian men have eyeballs and sinful natures and can be tempted to fall. We know that Every Man's Battle, that book and series, is written for Christian men, because every men battle with this. So, man, you want to overcome that battle? Think about honoring your wife. That honestly is you keep me from that temptation in a great way, because I think all the time if there's ever a temptation, I think of honoring them all. I do. I think, I just tell myself, Lord, just give me eyes only for my wife, only for mine. A lot of thoughts go through my mind, but this is kind of like Joseph. Like, you need to plan this out ahead of time. You don't just do it in the heat of the moment. This has to be down deep in your heart, that you're going to honor your wife in this way by not looking at others or comparing her to them. I guess the only time you hear me compare to mom is when we joke, like if we're flipping through the channels and there's some Camden's doing one of her exercise videos, and she's like, Dad, leave the room. And then she goes, but Dad, don't worry, she doesn't look anything like Mom. Because I know you only have eyes for Mom, and so you wouldn't like her anyways, right? That's right. But yeah, so that's point number one. That's one way to honor our wives, is have eyes for her and her only, okay? A major part of honoring our wives is how we speak to her and how we speak about her. And I'll talk a little bit more about the about her part here in a minute. But the way we speak to our wives, kind of like our goal for the church, we need to be nice, right? Husbands can get sarcastic. We need to avoid sarcasm. We need to talk to our wives without that. We should not use sarcasm. We should not make sarcastic little jokes and things. That's not honoring to her. We should talk to her nicely. Using the word. You know, we're told to wash her in the word, and so that's a pretty simple one, guys. We honor our wives by being nice, because we can be jerks, you know? Okay? All right, next. Honor her by speaking highly of her in front of your children, and make sure that your children honor their mother because of her position. Let me repeat that. We honor our wives by speaking highly of her in front of our kids. And we make sure that our kids honor their mom because she's their mom. All right. Men, husbands to be, it is our job. Our job. Everybody say my job. To make sure our kids respect their mom, regardless of a lot of things. It's our job. You know, I've kind of, I don't know if I was taught this when I was young, but I've always had this in me. When I see kids disrespecting their mom, I don't know if it's innate or what, I instantly say there's something wrong with dad, because it's dad's job. We honor our wives by making absolute clear, we will not deal with you disrespecting your mother in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Kids, you can listen too, right? And because you're going to, if you're a husband one day, you honor your wife by making sure your kids respect mom. Okay? So that means dads, men, husbands to be, we don't allow our children to not listen to mom. We don't allow them to talk back to mom. And we make it abundantly clear, particularly to our boys, if you even think of touching or laying a finger on your mom, you will wish you never had. Amen. It's cute to sit here and say honor our wives. This is how we honor our wives. It is our job. Okay? And you know, I've done this with my one. You know, she's got a nice spirit about her, but from the time she was young, she knew there were times where Camden's wasn't and isn't always the same at home, always perfect. But you know, there were times where maybe even Molly was provoked. I don't know, but it didn't matter. If Cam started to give back to mom at all, I said, whoa, that's your mother. Stop. And now I was talking with her because now she's an adult, 18 and a half years old. She's an adult. Still mom, but now, you know, if these two have interactions, I kind of am learning to take a little different approach. Like I kind of step between two adults and try to plead with them, right? But it is, dads, it's our job to be sure that our kids listen to, respect, and honor their mothers. Do not allow them to undermine her authority. The only thing that could ever interfere with this is if the children come to you and tell you something that your wife is doing that is just blatantly sinful, right? And then you deal with that. But all the things that go on in the home, it is our job to be sure that they are honoring her, because in doing that, we are honoring her. We enforce discipline if they disrespect her. You know, the way I grew up, and I hate to always be like that, hey, how I grew up, and this doesn't sound so pastoral, but I was always told, man, you want to not listen to your mom, I'll knock you into next week. I know that's not real loving and churchy, but that's the seriousness of this. Men. Okay? Men should not disclose the weaknesses of their wives to others, nor observe them too closely themselves. One thing we like to do is find the things that are wrong with our wives and pay close attention to them and get out the microscope. And then we, of course, like to tell others. I'm giving back to you what I have studied this means to really honor your wife. It means that you do not talk negative, right? I go back to the old, if you're going to talk about someone, whoever you're talking to needs to be a part of the solution. Okay? So if you are going to talk about your wife in any kind of derogatory way, you're talking to that person trying to solve and fix, not to just vent. Because we are human, sometimes we just feel like we just need to vent, and the person on the other end of that usually will reciprocate that and say, hey, sometimes we just need to vent. But as I study honoring our wives, that's not honoring our wives. It's not honoring to speak negatively about her to others. Okay? Now, again, that doesn't rule out counseling and things. If somebody's a part of the fixing, then we talk things out. But we don't just need to vent. Okay? We are one flesh. We have to remember that. So we do not demean our wives to other people. We talk to her instead, and we lead her. So simply because of her position, because of the fact that she is your wife, and she is one. You know, we honor her, we lead her, we talk to her. Even when her conduct is not great or not worthy, it doesn't mean we go talking about it. We talk to her. And we wash her in the Word. Okay? We should speak well of her to others. This is the positive aspect of not disclosing her weaknesses. We should actually intentionally look for things to praise about her to others. We think of ways, look, we don't want to spread lies, but if we flip the switch and we begin to look for the positive things that we can praise her for her faith. Hey, she's clinging to faith in Christ. We can praise her for her submission. We can praise her for how she uses her talents or her gifts. We can praise her for the way that she cares for our homes. There's many ways that we can intentionally honor her and speak well of her to others. Big boy pants, we all? Now, I was thinking about this today, and this is a wonderful time for me to practice what I preach. Right? I want to just give honor to my wife. Okay? If you need to leave, I do, man. I thought about this so much the last day and a half. I thought about Molly, and I have a lot to say. I'm going to take a few minutes to just honor her, because I want to tell you guys about her. As I really thought, and I'm not just trying to say words, when I think of my wife, she is the model of a Christian life. Okay? I thought about those words carefully, because I don't want to say she's a model Christian wife, right? I want to say she's the model of a Christian life. All right? Her life, to me, looks like what a Christian's life ought to look like. And the main thing that I mean by that is Molly's always thinking of other people. Okay? A lot of you are nodding, and you do know her, and you should nod, but I have lived with her for 25 years almost, 24 and a half. And for those 24 and a half years, I have watched her lay herself aside and think about others. It's like her default mode. That's a rare thing. My default mode is me. Most people's default mode is me. Her default mode is others, and that's the truth. And that to me is the model of a Christian wife. It's amazing. We have this cool thing that I think is really cool, is that we work really well together, right? in the sense that the things she likes, I don't like. The things she doesn't like, I like, and all this kind of stuff. So, man, this works out so good. A lot of probably envious husbands. But we both exercise. I do my exercise through walking really hard and stuff. She prefers to get outside and mow grass and rake leaves. Woo! All right? She says, hey, I would rather be out there getting my exercise. And I always, I worked in a grocery store. I like grocery stores and junk like that. So she hates Walmart type stuff. I like that stuff. It works out cool. Where she does that stuff because she likes to be outside. Am I lying? No, okay. So, but I got to just tell you, and this is just a tiny 1 second example of what goes on all the time. Saturday, I was in my office and I was getting ready for Sunday's sermon. And I knew that she was going out to exercise, to do the leaves in our yard. And I'm working on that sermon. I'm in there for a long time. And then I wanted to ask her something. So, I'd been in there for a while. And so I go outside and she's nowhere around. I can't find her. So I come, Cam, you know where Mom is? Now, Mom likes to do something on Saturdays. She likes to go over to her mom's and take the Saturday coupons out of her newspaper, right? And I'm also told while she's there, she drinks a little Diet Pepsi and eats a few chips, right? So Cam says, I don't know, she's probably over at Grandma's cutting coupons and drinking Diet Pepsi and eating chips, right? And I said, oh, okay, maybe she is. So I'll ask her later. So I go back in the office and work on the sermon, and she comes back, and I was like, where you been? She said, oh, I was over at my mom's doing her leaves, right? How many of us think that way? Molly always thinks that way. She's out in our yard doing 2 hours, 3 hours of leaves, says, oh, let me go do my mom's leaves. Not that she likes exercise that much, because at the end of the day, she came back and she's like, I am dead, right? But the thing is, I honor her because her mode is other people. And that's the truth. And here's I wrote down some of this stuff because I want to say this. It's not just the doing. We read about Martha, Martha, you do all these things. Molly always is doing things. But to me, it's beyond the doing. There's a heart that she's actually thinking of other people. Because you can run around doing 9 million things but not actually care about other people. She really does. She does things because she thinks and cares about others. And you know how I know that? Because it goes way beyond our front door. There's a lot of moms and wives who are real busy around the house for their own kids and their own family, but never goes past the front door. Mal goes way beyond the front door. She's always thinking of people all the time, all kinds of people. Lately, I've been seeing her reading Elizabeth Prentice's Life and Letters constantly, like always, daily. That's a good new thing to just be reading daily, and I can see just that spirit that Liz Prentice has taking form and shape in Mal's life. We've always said she's a doer and a thinker of others, but sometimes can be a little feisty. But that's even starting to just become sweeter and gentler. And I just wanted to say that. 2 last things I want to say here. And kids, I want you to listen to this. All right? Ready? And I want adults to listen to this. As I say these things about Molly, sometimes, and I'm going to be honest, I worry about what we think the Christian life is. Okay? I really worry about what the kids think the Christian life is. Because our Christian lives, basically our church, is what? We're really, really faithful. We come and do this. We love each other a lot. We eat together. We repeat. Right? We spend some time with each other doing fun things with each other. And that's part of the Christian life, kids. Look at me. That's not the whole Christian life. What you guys see us come and do here, and guys, what we do here, is not the Christian life. The Christian life is what I just told you about Molly. Christian life, you guys, we can come and I'm talking adults too, we can come and we can sit here and be nice to each other and go to Williamsburg together and learn the Bible together, but that's the Christian life. Being out in the yard and thinking, oh, who else can I go help now? Oh, what can I do for others? That's the Christian life. This is how we get prepared. But I just kind of have this fear that we're becoming this idea of this is it. And kids, you go to the Christian school and you get the Christian teaching and you get the nice people, and then you come here and you get the same thing. But that's not the Christian life. That's Christian teaching. The Christian life is going and doing and thinking outside, thinking not about yourself. That's the Christian life. I once heard Faith Ann say, Jesus, others. That's the Christian life. All right? We can be very inward and look really good about it. And I say, we need to be more like my wife, who I'm here honoring tonight, where we put ourselves aside and we think about others. That's why I said at the beginning, she's the model of a Christian life. And I mean that. And I said last week to the wives, Christian women are the only people who can get prettier as they get older. Right? Well, you get prettier to me the older you get. Sometimes I wonder if I'm crazy. Sometimes I'm like, why are these 20-year-olds not looking at my wife thinking she's hot? I don't want to be like those pastors that talk about their smoking hot wives. I'm just telling you that this type of character in a woman that I am describing and honoring tonight gets prettier to you the older you get. Sometimes she makes it easy for me to not look at other women. We went to the Grove City swim meet. I didn't really realize what I was getting into because I didn't think about this. I'm seeing a bunch of college girls in little swimsuits, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't try to put myself in this position. I flip channels to avoid this, but there was a girl who had come here that we went to watch, and I never told Molly this, but at the end of the day on the way home, I'm like, Molly's better looking than all of them. But I don't mean to embarrass you, Molly. I mean, we honor our wives by finding good and speaking truthful good things and finding anything that we can. And I didn't have to search hard at all to do that. She made it really easy for me to teach this. But that's another way to honor her, to speak well of her. Okay? Let's move on. I love you. Treat your wife with understanding. So what does that mean? How do you treat your wife with understanding? Well, that means, as somebody said earlier, I don't remember which one of you guys it was, for us to treat our wives with understanding means that we need to understand her. How do you learn to understand something? All right, what do you do, Camden? And you study, right? She's trying to understand things in school. You study. So in order to treat our wives with understanding, that means we have to understand her. We have to learn all about her, everything that we can. We have to learn about her feelings, about her hopes, her fears, her needs. We have to know these things about her. Which means what, guys? How do we learn those things? We have to be around her a lot, number one. We have to spend time with her. We have to like and learn how to communicate to her. To learn these things, there's got to be ongoing time and communication. We need to learn her strengths and her weaknesses, her likes and her dislikes. And then we need to take all that and we need to take what we've learned and use it all to build her up. To build her up in the Lord. To help her become who the Lord is making her to be. So treating her with understanding means studying her, learning her in every way. Okay? Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. The guys, we already discussed this on Sunday, but I'll say what we concluded and what I concluded from my studies. Here's what this means. Guys will hear, oh no, God is not going to answer my prayers because I'm not treating my wife right. That's what it sounds like, right? Kind of a detailed further look into this, it seems to indicate that if you're not treating your wife right, when you're not honoring God with your life and you're not doing things right, you oftentimes will find it hard to even pray. If you are in conflict with another person in the church, or you find it hard to even think spiritually, to pray in a right-hearted way. And really, this is what I've come to understand. Peter is saying, hey guys, if you're not treating your wife with honor, if you're not respecting her, if you're not doing, you're going to have an embittered spirit, which is going to affect your prayer life. You're not going to be able to pray right. So to me, that should be a very motivating force. And that should be something to look at. If your prayer life is struggling or affected in some ways, take a look. We should always take a look at what might be going on in our lives. How have I been honoring my wife? Our fellowship with God, man, is closely related to our fellowship with our wives. Now, I wanted to ask Brandon what he learned because he's the closest guy to joining the ranks of married men as far as age goes. I wanted to ask him, but Matthew, let me ask you, since you're the next one up. You're 12. We don't ever know what the Lord holds. We don't know if He would have you to be married or not, but if He does, might be anywhere from 10 to 20 years away, right? But what did you hear if you do get married someday and God has that? What did you really hear about how you need to treat her?
Well, I'm just gonna say a couple like words that I can think of. Like, yeah. I should treat her with like respect and honor, which is like kind of like you said. Like the more we really look into like the person that like we love, it's kind of hard to think, but like we probably would have a lot of stuff to like honor them about, and then when we honor them, other people also highly of the person, which makes it your relationship is like all better because people like think highly of them, and it's because of like you honoring them, and still processing, but that's what I can think of right now.
Good.
Listen, you're at a perfect age where you take this stuff in and you get it into your mind and into your heart. Okay, this is when you learn this. So that one day we pray the Lord brings this out in your life, because the things we're talking about here, they sound right, but they're not always easy to live out, but they're pleasing to God. We honor her because of the position she is in, and that position really is right here with us. We're one with her, So, Matt or Jonathan, did you guys want to comment on anything before we leave this topic? We pull our toes back in and we move on to verse 8. Either of you guys?
One way one way since you embarrassed Molly, I'll embarrass Paula. I'll go and look at Paula and I'll say, atheists are so dumb. How can they say there's not a God? Look at you. No, it was a good point. All those points are really essential, and it's one of those things that, like you said, also going back to the Christian life, we learn these things, but the Christian life is putting into practice, and that's the other aspect of it. So we can't listen to these things and then just go home and forget about it or not practice it or put it into practice, in other words. So it's that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves. So yeah.
I just definitely agree with that, and I appreciate like these things in Scripture, just because like it's just good to hear and good to know, because like especially like in the world we live in, how women do get like demeaned, kind of disrespected, and that stuff gets taken out of context. But I really like that. This how it talks about that, and I know there's another part we talk about loving our wives as Christ loved the church, and I think that means a lot to me, and it's a good reminder, and like Jonathan said, like something to always look back to, and whenever I act like an idiot sometimes, whenever I come to prayer, I think those are moments where I feel God working in my heart to humble me and sanctify me in those ways, to just be like, hey, God brought me a wife for a reason, and not to just use that for my own things, but just to honor her and spend time with her and share life with and stuff like that. It's good. I like to hear it.
So then a final, to me, goal in my mind is a goal for us is to have 5 godly men. Asher, you're one of the 5. Jonathan, you're already the godly man in Baltimore. I'm talking about here in Newcastle, in Discipleship Community Church. That we see 8 sweet, gentle-spirited, godly women and girls, and 5 godly men and boys who grow to be godly men, that hear the things that godly men do and treat wives and girls and just people the way godly men should. And that we all together live this Christian life. And that's another thing to throw out there tonight. I hope you guys understand what I mean. I think we can become just, this is good, and this is a part of the Christian life, but it's not at all the whole thing. And I think we need a reminder of that tonight. So we want to be godly men that live this life. And it's, yeah. So should we move on? Okay. All right. Let's move to verse 8. But before I do, I know that a couple times this past week, Cam has joined Grandma and Darcy in their Bible reading at 9 o'clock. And I know that she has told me that you guys read 1 Peter 3. Okay. So I'm going to let you guys just teach the rest of the chapter and just tell us all that you discussed and what you learned. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm kidding because the one night Cam came home after you guys read 1 Peter 3, and I was like, oh, so you can handle teaching this then next time? She was like, whoa. And I was like, well, then why'd you read? Right? But my point in that is, listen, we live in this quick type of society where we turn on the news, we're like, oh, the war in Ukraine's still going on. Okay, turn a channel. Oh, the war in Israel's happening. Okay, turn a channel. We get these quick things, and we move on. Like everything is just like that. We don't just take it in, and that I fear carries over to the Word. You know, when we read and when you guys read and when we study, like, we can't do it that way. It has to have a lasting effect. We have to get it. We don't get through the Word. We get the Word through us, into us. We got to take it in and really have it impact our lives. So that was just something I wanted to throw in. So verse 8, finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. So our subtitle there says all Christians. So now he's talking to all, so he's bringing it all together. He has addressed slaves, their masters. He's addressed wives, their husbands. He's addressed citizens and the authorities. And now he's bringing it all together because really he's addressing Christians and he's saying, okay, all of you, here now is what you finally, this all means. You need to all be unified, of one mind, living in Christ, because we are one in Christ. This is essential. Whatever position you find yourself in, you understand how he had all these different positions. Unity amongst believers is essential. And he gives 4 keys to that unity. He says, here's the 4 keys to having that Christian unity. Sympathy, love, tenderness, and humility. Wow. Right? So think about that. Are you sympathetic? Are you tender-hearted? See, he said this. This is the key to unity. You know what? Tender-hearted, I kind of looked up, is the opposite of rough. Right? I mean, it takes these kind of things, having a tender heart, being sympathetic, being compassionate. It takes that kind of spirit to have this type of unity that we're told to have in all these different relationships that we find ourselves in. And so really, it needs to be really important. And it should be very important to you and to me and to each one of us. And others should see how important it is by the attitude that we display and by the actions that we do. So I kind of sum that one up by saying, be really nice. You know? And I can't repeat it enough that thinking of others above ourselves, thinking of the whole, thinking of other people, right? Fenelon, you all know Fenelon. Yes, you all have heard what he has to say. I'm sure you remember about this verse. Francois Fenelon. I want to share with you what he wrote about this particular verse. Let me read the verse again. Finally, all of you should be of one mind. All of you sympathize with each other, love each other as brothers and sisters, be tender-hearted, and keep a humble attitude. All right? Deal with the 1600 language a little bit. Tune in for one paragraph. Try to decipher what he says here. He's saying this about this verse. In your private society, keep unanimously your own and each other's spiritual good, not only agreeing in your affairs and civil converse, but having one heart and mind as Christians. To eat and drink together, if you do no more, is such society as beasts may have. So we eat and drink together, right? He's saying if you guys eat and drink together and don't do any more than that, like animals get together in the woods and eat together, right? Right? He says to do these things in excess, to eat and drink intemperately together, is a society worse than that of beasts and below them. So, you know, your potluck dinners where you just pig out, right? He's like, that's even worse than what the animals do. To discourse together of civil business is to converse as men. So we get together as Christians, we eat, we pig out, we talk about regular day business. He's like, you're just being like the guys at work that you have lunch with, right? But the peculiar converse of Christians in that notion, as born again to immortality and unfading inheritance above, is to further one another towards that. To further one another towards that inheritance that Peter told us awaits us, right? To put one another, now listen to this. This is what he's saying, like we ought to be doing as we're unified, as we're eating together, as we're conversing together, as we sat there in that basement Sunday. We should put one another in the mind of heaven and of heavenly things. And it is strange that men who profess to be Christians, when they meet, Either fill one another's ears with lies and profane speeches, or with vanities and trifles, or at the best with the affairs of earth, and not a word of those things that should most possess the heart, and where the mind should be most set. Right, I'll stop there. But, I've often talked about, come on, this is what Christians do. It's like the church thing. Like, when we're at church, we talk about Christian things, but when we're sitting in the basement and we got other people around, then we don't, But he's even saying if we're going to be of one mind and unified, and that we should be reminding each other of heavenly things, of the priceless in here, talking about spiritual things together. So keep that in mind. We should talk about spiritual things. Why? Because we should love to see each other growing. Do you love to see each other growing? And we should mourn when we see each other sin. Now listen to this. It should bother us when we see a brother or sister in our body sinning or having wrong heart or attitude. But here's the note that I have for you. We should be quicker to cry over their sin than to rail them about their sin. Now, we know that there are things that are confronted and that we do that in love, but we're very quick so often when we see things to get negative, to get critical, to rail those things. When we see it, it should cause us to mourn. It should cause us to go into real prayer and really hurt that this brother or this sister is in this, And that hit me when I studied that. Because where there's love and this unity that Peter speaks of, that's the attitude that is there. We don't have bitterness and dissension. And when we do admonish each other, we learn how to do it wisely and gently. Okay? We learn how to say things to admonish each other, even the children, right? Wisely, gently. We think through how we admonish, because we know that love covers a multitude of sins, as Peter's going to tell us here soon. And actually, unless something just needs addressed by the church and something is just really, oftentimes the better route is to pass by offenses. Okay? So we need to seek to know this kind of love, how to handle things with a right heart, a right attitude, wisely. Just think that through. Think through verse 8. Sympathetic with each other, loving each other, tender-hearted, humble. Okay? Verse 9. And we'll maybe end with verse 9 tonight. Verse 9 says, don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and He will grant you His blessing. All right. What is the blatant irony here? Anybody pick up on the irony of what is being said here? Irony being like, what? All right. I'll tell you what I see is the irony of it all is who is saying it. Okay? Peter. Short-tempered sometimes, and a little impulsive sometimes. As we've mentioned several times, tried to cut. We think he was probably going for the head, but missed and got the ear, right? And now he's writing and saying, don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate when people insult you. So what we need to remember here is, what changed in Peter? He heard Jesus teach him, right? This guy transformed as he heard Jesus tell him things, and now he takes all that stuff that he learned from Jesus, he puts it down for other believers to hear. And then that's why we're told to devote ourselves to this teaching. Because these apostles, they were with Jesus. Right? They weren't always perfect. They heard him. They lived it. They wrote it to us. So Peter tells us then, don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when you're insulted. Instead, pay them back with blessing. Okay? Now, I was thinking about what is known as the golden rule. Yeah, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the scripture that we use for that is Matthew 7:12, when Jesus presented this do unto others. But Peter takes that golden rule and he says, do unto others even when they do evil to you. Do unto others as you would have them do. Hey, I want people to do good to me, so I'll do the good that I want them to do to me. He says, when they do evil to you, do good to them. Right? This is what makes us aliens. This is what makes us strange, because Christians act like this. Right? Christians are told to love those that hate them, bless them that curse them. It's all through Scripture. And really it's by the Spirit of God that we have that we're called to display the same grace that he has shown to us. Now, I noticed these words that we talked about last week. Look at verse 9. That is what God has what? Called you to do. Remember when we discussed that last week? That's the second time now in the last few verses where he talks about suffering. He talks about suffering even for doing good. He talks about being insulted. And he says, Christian, this is what you've been called to. We talked last week, Christians are always like, hey, I feel like I'm called to do this or called to do that. Never do we say, hey, I feel like I'm called when somebody insults me to say something really nice back to them. But that is our calling, Christians. That is the calling that we have been given, that we're supposed to give that same grace that we have received. And really the main thrust, and I'm about done here, the main thrust that Peter uses for us to live this kind of life takes back to chapter 1, when he spent that whole chapter reminding us, yeah, you're going to face some rough stuff. This road is not going to be easy. You're going to suffer. You're going to suffer wrongfully. And then he gives us this list of things that just seem impossible, but we know they're not. Okay? But he keeps us in the mindset of why. He says there's this priceless inheritance that awaits. That priceless inheritance that is coming, that no one can take away from you. No man's cursings, no man's hatred toward you, that cannot be taken from you, because we're laying up treasures. When we behave in this way that we're told to behave, we're laying up treasures for that inheritance that awaits us. And I just end here, and then I'll open up if anybody wants to say anything. We need to remind each other of that so much. So much. When the hard stuff is coming, we're facing difficult situation, we need to remind each other, hey, remember the inheritance that awaits. Remember what lies ahead. Remember what we're told. This is alien talk. This is weird, but this is how we're supposed to be. And remind each other, but remind each other of why. That song, Glory Awaits, right? Glory Awaits. So we hit these 3 verses, and we'll pray shortly, but I want to just give you guys a chance if you had anything that you'd like to say in response to the apostles' teaching tonight.
I was thinking about, I've never heard a pastor have a sermon on wives, this is how you're to be, and husbands, this is how you're to be. I'm just thinking about that. Truly. We've talked about things before in here that I don't remember you teaching us this. You did? Did you?
Well, I've done it through, over the years, we did the excellent wife, the exemplary husband.
Yes.
We had this type of teaching, but I don't know if I hope this sat here and said, but I don't know.
I appreciated that on both ends, because I was just thinking how, all the people I know and love would like to hear like them to hear it, you know, on both ends. Cause it's not something that, just because I didn't hear it in church doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I doubt that it really does. So I can share it with them, thank you.
I think anybody who, is engaged, this would be great premarital counseling. I mean, just these verses for the guys and girls both.
Yeah, and Matthew and Asher and Brandon got premarital counseling tonight.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. These verses have hit me. Man, I've definitely been trying to obey the apostles' teaching. They're hitting me. Like I'm really trying to live this. I'm trying to ramp it up a notch in my relationship with them all. They kind of like having a shock collar around me. Sometimes I maybe start and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Those words come back, you know. Others?
I like how you talked about like how we should really love to see each other growing and like hurt or like be sad when people are not growing or whatever, sinning, because it is easy to like, you know, be like, oh, this person's doing this or whatever, and like talk about it like you don't like it, but really like, you know, just be gossiping or whatever, not really like be sad and want to see them grow and be like just as happy when we see good things as we are like talk about all those things, like, oh, did you notice so and so is doing really good at whatever, just as much or more.
Yeah.
I think we really need to do that for sure.
I like the second half, Matthew, you know, we were just having a conversation about his some issues in his class. You know, you don't have to go into details of it, but you know, some of the classmates were giving him a hard time and causing some embarrassment and stuff, and we were just talking about this yesterday, and I think it's a really good reminder, and you know, we can remind ourselves of too, huh, Matthew, about don't retaliate with insults when people insult you, instead pay back. I know I can think about Matthew, I'm sure it's hard for him to do that right now.
Yeah, I have many things I could say, but I don't really want to say.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah, it's an encouragement for you. And like it says, God will bless you. You know, it's what you're called to do.
I will say that, Darcy and I talked about this last week after the teaching, how, the two of us are in like a totally different position, because we're not wives, we're not future wives, we're not wives anymore, and how, it's just like, we can't improve our marriages now. And we can't go back and undo or redo anything. But hopefully this teaching is great for women who still have husbands or are gonna have husbands.
We can, we can definitely tell you mistakes I've made, you know, what I learned from them, but also like how learning this and how it did improve so many things, you know, over time. We did a Bible study with a lady once, and her heart was very hurt, and it had been years and years and years, and she was divorced, and it was sad, but at the end of our reading and discussion, I think she had truly forgiven him in her heart. And it was just sad to see that all those years went, you know what I mean? Consumed with all of that bitterness, and so truly, if we follow what it says, we're gonna be better husbands and wives. And better examples to our kids.
Incredibly practical material that we're to devote ourselves to, right? So, all right, let's have a time of prayer, and Camden and Molly are prepared to hang out with the younger kids, and